We're enjoying a study together of Jesus Christ himself, the central being of all the universe, the one that we adore, the one we love. Our lives are centered around Christ. Our churches are centered around Christ. The Word of God is centered around Christ. And so we're so pleased to be able to take a few moments together in these days to focus on Jesus Christ himself and concentrate our thinking on something of real value, nothing could be more valuable than Jesus Christ. We're looking now at some of the attributes of Christ. We've looked at his titles in the last 6 times together. Today I think we want to look at some of his attributes. And what we're going to see is the attributes of Jesus Christ are the same as the attributes for God himself. And that should not surprise us since he is God. And so I think we want to make sure we keep remembering that. He is the human, he took on human form to represent God in that God-man form to us. We can never see God. He's invisible. I don't think in all eternity we'll see God the Father. But Jesus Christ represents the Trinity in human form, and we see him on earth during this time of the incarnation, and we also see him, I think, for all eternity. I think you and I will have the privilege of seeing God in this human form that Jesus has taken upon himself. And so what are his attributes? In Hebrews chapter 1, once again, we find that he is immutable. That is, he can never change. He's unchangeable. In verse 10, it says, "And you, Lord, in the beginning laid the foundations of the earth, and the heavens are the works of your hands. They will perish, but you remain, and they all will become old like a garment, and like a mantle you will roll them up. Like a garment they will also be changed, but you are the same, for your years will not come to an end." This is a wonderful thing to consider, as we saw when we talked about God earlier, to know that God never changes, and if by some stretch of the imagination God could change, that would be a frightening thing, because the God we worship now may not have been the God of the Scriptures, and the God we worship now may not be the God of the future. That's frightening to consider. It's incomprehensible. And so when we think about it, what a very comforting theology we have here, what truth we have, that he never changes. He's the same as we see here right in this passage. The world will pass away, and it'll be rolled up like a garment, but he was the same. Matter of fact, in one of the better-known verses of Hebrews chapter 13, verse 8, it says concerning Jesus Christ that he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. So as God cannot change, so Jesus Christ cannot change. His attitudes never change. His proclamations never change. His moods never change. He is the same forever. He will always love us. He will always grace us. He will always be holy. All these attributes of God that we looked at recently concerning God are true of Jesus Christ. And immutability is one of those that we cherish. There's another attribute that we want to talk about, and that is omnipresence. He is also everywhere at once. And he could not be anything differently than that. God is not localized in one spot. Jesus said, for example, in Matthew chapter 18, verse 20, "For where 2 or 3 have gathered together in my name, I am there in their midst." Well, that couldn't be possible if Jesus wasn't able to be everywhere at once. Now, we know that he's taken on human form. And so there is a localization of his human form, and yet somehow beyond the comprehension of ourselves, he's also able to be at all places at once. And so that he can tell us that whenever 2 or 3 Christians are gathered together, he's right there in their midst. Now, the context of Matthew chapter 18 is actually in the context of church discipline. So we want to keep that in that context. And yet at the same time, we see that as the church deals with sin, and it does so throughout the whole world at different times, he's always there with us. He's with us at each point. So he doesn't have to say, well, wait a minute at Southern View Chapel, I've got something going on at First Baptist down the street. I'll come back later. Now, he can be with all of us at all points in time because he is omnipresent. Only God can be omnipresent. And how Jesus Christ can have a localized human body and live in that form and be seen in that form and yet be omnipresent is something of great mystery and wonder and something well worth pondering and rejoicing over as we consider who Jesus Christ is.